the one.
What? What do you mean he's the one?
In a room where power and wealth converged, a deal worth $500 million was about to be sealed. The men in suits carried confidence, while others stood quietly in the shadows, unnoticed. But sometimes the loudest truths come from the most overlooked voices. A young girl, just the maid's daughter, stepped forward, her eyes filled with something more powerful than fear. What she revealed next would shatter reputations, unravel lies, and halt the $500 million deal in its tracks. But why would a child dare to speak in a room full of power?
Before that fateful day in the boardroom, her life was far simpler, quiet, invisible to most. The young girl, daughter of the household maid, had grown up surrounded by wealth she could never touch. Each morning, she walked through polished marble halls carrying her mother's tray, careful never to disturb the grandeur around her. She knew her place, a child of the staff, expected to remain unseen. Yet, despite her humble surroundings, she carried something many of the powerful lacked, an unshakable sense of truth. Teachers often praised her sharp mind, though few beyond her small circle ever listened. At home, she would help her mother after long shifts, watching her wipe away sweat and exhaustion with the same hands that had served others all day. The girl never complained. She had dreams bigger than the uniforms her mother washed or the footsteps she quietly followed. But dreams, in a place ruled by wealth and prejudice, were fragile things. She had overheard conversations, snippets of deals, whispered tensions, careless remarks dripping with superiority. And though no one noticed her, she noticed everything. What she saw and heard planted a quiet unease inside her, a knowing that something was not as it seemed. It was only a matter of time before that hidden knowledge would push her from the shadows into the spotlight, where speaking a single truth could change everything.
The tension in the mansion grew as the day wore on. The $500 million deal loomed like a shadow, the weight of it pressing down on every conversation, every decision. No one saw the girl slip quietly through the back hallways, unnoticed by the businessmen whose names were printed on million-dollar contracts. Yet she couldn't ignore the whispers. The men were discussing more than just business. Words like valuable assets, disposal, and handling floated through the air, their true meaning clear in the way they spoke, each word wrapped in cold indifference. The girl's heart quickened. This wasn't just business talk. It was about people, people like her mother and so many others who worked in silence, unseen. She knew her mother had been promised better, promised that this job, this loyalty, would bring something more, perhaps even a chance to live like the family she served. But the girl knew the truth. She'd seen her mother's tired eyes, heard the sighs at the end of each long day. She wasn't treated as an equal, she was disposable. It wasn't until the conversation turned to the final details of the deal that she realized the full extent of it. They spoke of disposing of the workers once the deal was signed, cutting them off with no severance, no consideration. They were merely numbers to be erased. The girl froze. Her heart raced as the pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just a business deal. It was an entire system designed to keep the powerful at the top and the powerless beneath. For a moment, the girl considered doing nothing. The fear of speaking up, of stepping into the light, felt suffocating. But then she thought of her mother, the life she had lived, the sacrifices she had made, and of the workers who had no voice. In a moment of clarity, she stepped forward, her tiny form appearing in the doorway where the men sat. She couldn't stay quiet any longer. Before she could even speak, the men looked up, their faces hardening in surprise. She was just a child, just the maid's daughter. Yet there she stood, with the weight of their secrets in her hands. The room fell silent. The girl's voice, quiet but firm, shattered the tension. "You can't erase us!" The men stared, shocked by her audacity. One of the businessmen, his face twisted in disdain, rose from his chair. "You're in the wrong room, little girl," he sneered. But the girl didn't back down. She had seen too much, known too much, to remain silent. As her words hung in the air, the other men exchanged glances. It was too late to silence her now.
The room erupted in chaos as the girl's words sank in. The businessman who had spoken to her with contempt now turned red with rage. "How dare you!" he spat, stepping forward, his voice trembling with fury. But the girl stood her ground, her small body rigid with a newfound courage. Before anyone could react, the Middle Eastern man, the one who had been so silent, so cold, stood up abruptly. His chair scraped harshly against the floor, the sound cutting through the tension. "Enough," he said, his voice calm but heavy with authority. He turned to the girl, his face unreadable. For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. The eyes of everyone in the room were locked on the girl, waiting, questioning. What would she do now? The girl's breath came in short gasps, her heart pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. But then, a shift. Something in the man's gaze softened. Was it respect, or perhaps something else? Guilt. "I've been where you are," he said, the words quiet but sharp. His voice broke the silence like a stone dropped into water, ripples of emotion spreading through the room. Before anyone could respond, the man turned to the businessman, his eyes icy. "You don't get to make decisions about people's lives." The room seemed to hold its breath as the truth of his words settled over them. The girl's courage had done more than expose their racism. It had opened the door for something far more dangerous. A man who had once been part of the system was now turning on it. The powerful deal worth $500 million seemed insignificant in that moment. It was nothing compared to the life-altering consequences of standing up against an unjust system. The businessman who had been closest to her now backed away, fear flickering in his eyes. "This deal is off," the man said firmly. "You're no better than the system you've built, and you, little one, just showed me who the real leaders are." The girl stood tall, knowing her voice had changed everything.
The deal that had once promised unimaginable wealth crumbled within moments. Contracts were left unsigned, briefcases closed, and the once confident men avoided one another's eyes. What they had built on greed and silence had been torn apart, not by another wealthy tycoon, but by the voice of a child. The maid's daughter, once invisible in the grand mansion, had become the center of a storm. She hadn't just saved her mother and countless workers from being discarded. She had revealed the ugly truth of power built on prejudice. In a world where the powerless are often silenced, she had chosen to speak, and in doing so, forced others to confront their own complicity. For her, life would never be the same. She returned to her mother's side, no longer just a servant's daughter, but a symbol of courage. The whispers that once dismissed her as unseen now carried respect, though she cared little for the approval of the powerful. What mattered was that she had protected those who had no voice. And yet, as the dust settled, the larger truth remained. This was not a single story.
It was a reflection of countless unseen battles. How many deals are signed each day that silence the vulnerable? How many children grow up believing their voices do not matter because of the color of their skin or the status of their parents? The girl's act was extraordinary, but it should not have to be. Justice should not rely on courage in the face of overwhelming fear. It should be a right, a foundation for all. So the question lingers. If a child can expose the truth and stop injustice, what excuse do we, the rest of us, have for staying silent?